Welcome back everyone to the second part of this suspension overhaul. So we did the front last time and I turned the car around so that we could do the back and noticed some dripping. So just before we get into the suspension, just a little something you may want to check. I had some dripping coming down over the new front suspension lower arms, and when I went down and had a look, this fitting had cracked and completely fallen apart, so we were spilling fuel everywhere, and there's the offending item. So I thought these were metal fittings, but actually they're kind of a cheap plastic, some sort of horrid 90s styling, I think. So we've got nice new pure metallic ones that we're going to fit. I've already fitted the return, which you can see just there, that black one. Shame it's not silver to match, but that's the return, which comes back out of the K-jet system, goes back to the tank, and I'm just waiting for a new supply. Just going back to these pesky bushes from before, so it turns out these aren't 22mm bushes that fit my larger anti-roll bar. They're actually 15s or 16s that have been rammed on there. That's why they were so tight. It's also interesting to see that we don't have ridges on the new bushes, so I've sent them back and I'm getting some custom ones made up which will have the ridge, which means it should grip the end of the bar and solve our problem. I'll let you know on that. And then once we've done that, we can obviously put those bushes back on the car and hopefully that's the front end done. So once I'd finished mopping up petrol off the floor and playing with bushes, it was on to the actual job, which was the rear suspension rebuild. But before I did that, I had leaking brake fluid from this brake. Now, what happened was I put a new cylinder on previously, but I stupidly put my foot on the brake when the shoes went on, which meant the pistons popped out and I think broke the seal and made them leak. That in turn contaminated the shoes, so we've got a new cylinder, new shoes, cleaned it all up because that's ruined those surfaces. Also got a new drum because again that was contaminated and wasn't really worth messing around with that. So this old drum caked with brake fluid inside, so better to get a new one. We also got a new wheel bearing kit so that we can fit that and basically do a complete refresh on that one wheel. I should really do the other wheel, but I just wanted to do one to get things going and see if that sorted out the issue with the leak. Another issue I had associated with that was the handbrake didn't really work on that wheel. I thought it was because the shoes were contaminated, but actually this handbrake lever, which is part of the mechanism, is completely seized. That should not be in that position. It should be able to be flexed using the handbrake spring here. It didn't work, and that meant this wedge adjuster system also didn't work. So I'm hoping replacing all of that will sort out the leak and my handbrake. So after all that, we finally got the drum on and we can get on with the actual rear bush suspension changes. Most videos show you how to do this by removing the entire beam, but I want to do it with the beam in place and I'll show you how to do that. So the beam's a pivot which runs underneath the back of the car. It is just a very large piece of metal that goes across, and then the shocks are the moving part of the pivot and they go up and down. So I'm going to change my shocks and the bushes. Now, to get to the bushes, you need to undo the beam brackets and lower it down onto some support, in my case some batteries and some lumps of wood. The reason you do that is if you let it fall down, you'll rip off your brake lines, possibly your fuel lines and handbrake cable and anything else. So the trick here is to undo the brackets, support the beam with a jack, and then have some support, so a couple of old car batteries, lumps of wood on either side, that allow you to drop the beam down. Now you only need to drop the beam down a few centimeters because it's going to allow you to get to the large bolts that bolt onto the bracket. If you look here, you'll be able to see that there is a metallic tunnel that the large bolt goes through, and that is the bolt. It's a big one because it holds the bracket to the whole of your rear assembly, so that's important. So what you'll need to do is get to that bolt, but that bolt is hidden behind the bodywork normally, so that's why you need to drop the beam. Once you drop the beam, you'll be able to see the bracket that the bolt goes through, and you can see mine's actually already got fairly modern split bushes on, so that makes life a bit easier for me. But these are really hard red bushes. I think they're bug pack or something like that. They're very tough, so I'm going to change them to slightly more forgiving purple ones. when you drop the bracket, it comes down off these two threaded bolts which are welded to the chassis, and then it bolts up and the large bolt goes through your bush into this metallic tunnel. You do it up the other side, and that is what holds your beam on. Pretty basic stuff, but you can see why you need to drop the beam, because there's just no way you can get the bolt out without dropping it down just those few centimeters. And once you've got one off, you need to go to the other side of the beam on the other side of the car and do the same thing. So as I say, this is one of the two brackets with the bush in. This is a more modern bush. It's split with insert, which makes it much easier. If you've got the old rubbers, you're going to have fun getting those out. This is the other one where I haven't uninstalled it yet, but I'm just going to show you the idea of using the jack to lift the beam up and down and support it so that you're able to get to the bush. So actually what I'm showing you now is really when you're reinstalling the beam, but it's the same principle. So the beam's supported, I've just got it about right so I can get to those bolts with a socket and undo them. And then once I've done that, what you want to do is lift the beam back up using your jack so that you get the beam back into position, and as you do, those bolts will disappear up behind the seals, and then you just need to re-bolt it on, and then again you can drop it down to undo it. So that's why we're doing it this way rather than taking the whole beam out. And here we have our custom made 21mm bushes. We've got to thank Mark Carter at Classic VW for getting these custom built for us. These go onto the larger Eibach anti-roll bar. As you can see, they also have a nice groove, or not groove, rather a ridge inside them, which means that ridge can sit inside the groove on the bar and stop them sliding off. And here we are, here's the finished product. We've got our new springs, our new shocks, new disc and pads, or drum, sorry, and pads at the back there. It's been a long haul getting this all done. Got the top mounts back in. I didn't change the other rear drum because this took so long, but you can see the shocks and springs are on there. The shocks and springs themselves were pretty straightforward. It was just everything else that took the time, particularly the brakes. I've taken her out for a spin. The ride height's the same, but the springs are a little bit more forgiving, so speed bumps are a bit more comfortable now. Thanks for watching. I hope that's been helpful, and please catch up on the next video. And as ever, a like, a comment and a subscribe are always welcome. Thanks all.